We are headed to the NFC North and the Detroit Lions. It has been an interesting offseason. They've made some big moves. We mentioned the Carlton Davis trade earlier. They got DJ Reader from Cincinnati. I thought that was a huge signing. What do you think their biggest need is left?
Yeah, to me, it's for sure edge and corner. The Cam Sutton news that just came out, they did trade for Carlton Davis, brought Meek Robinson in, but they still need one more corner because you know this, Brees. Most teams are in 11 personnel, which is 3 receivers, 1 tight end. So you got to be able to have another corner to match up. And then edge. Somebody needs to help Aiden Hutchinson on the other side. For the last few years, we thought it would be James Houston. We saw him take a step his rookie year, was banged up last year, never really got back to what he was doing his rookie year. I think edge makes a lot of sense at the back of the first round. Could it be Darius Robinson, the guy that can move up and down the line of scrimmage, or a guy like Chop Robinson, who has the most explosive first step in this draft? Makes a lot of sense. And then maybe in that second round, you take a corner.
Yeah, I think with the Lions, and they're picking a spot, they're not used to drafting so low down here. They're gonna be a little
so late.
Yeah, with that 29th overall pick. And, the interesting thing about corner is that, look, they made the trade for Carlton Davis. They signed Meek Robertson. They made both those moves before the Cam Sutton stuff happened. So they already knew they needed corners, and now they're back down a corner from what they originally planned. So it's like, okay, we're back at square one. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a corner in the first round just because of how that all played out. But I do agree with you. I do think edge makes sense, but I would not be surprised if, one of those corners falls into their lap that they take someone there. So,
well, you also got to remember Brian Branch plays a lot in the slot too, right? So like they like their 3 safeties. Brian Branch has the flexibility to move into the slot. So for day one, they're good, but the depth is a question mark. That's why I say I think in the second round, it makes a lot of sense. I think edge is the more pressing need for them right now.
All right, let's move to the Green Bay Packers. One thing they do not need is a quarterback because this team never needs a quarterback. They just always have a quarterback. It's unbelievable. They do need someone to protect their quarterback, though. We saw David Bakhtiari not returning to Green Bay. He had been there forever. So is that their biggest need, is the offensive line, or do you think it's somewhere else?
Yeah, I think it's offensive tackle for sure. They need an offensive tackle to replace David Bakhtiari, even though he really hasn't played that much the last few years. And they did lose Devondre Campbell, so they could use a linebacker, cornerback. Jair Alexander is out there. Stokes is too, but they need a third corner. And then even safety, they did sign Xavier McKinney, but they need to pair him with somebody because they lost Darnell Savage in free agency. So offensive tackle to me is the biggest need. And then from there, they can kind of do best player available or attack some of these position groups like linebacker and corner.
Yeah, it does feel like they're in a good spot too with the 25th overall pick. And I definitely agree with linebacker because if you look at their inside linebackers with Quay Walker and Isaiah McDuffie, and those are the only 2 guys with real experience. So you don't have much behind them. And so I won't be surprised if we see them add some linebacker depth in the draft. But you know what? They're the Packers. They don't have too many holes, and they have a quarterback of the future. So everyone hates Green Bay because they always have a quarterback. Let's go to who's next? Let's go to the Minnesota Vikings. They don't have a
Kirk's
quarterback.
old team.
Yeah, exactly. Kirk's old team. That seems like their biggest need, right? Quarterback?
Oh, without a doubt. I don't even think it's questionable. I think close second is corner. I won't say close second because if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. Now, they did sign Sam Darnold this offseason, so maybe you could be a bridge guy. But I think corner, they needed to pair somebody with Byron Murphy for sure. And edge could be a position, right? They lost both of their edge players from last year. Daniil Hunter left, and also DJ Wanham left as well. So they did sign Jonathan Grenard and Van Ginkel. It'll be interesting knowing his history with Brian Flores. Where does he play him? Does he play him at the outside and in the inside linebacker? That's the flexibility he gives you. And they did sign Aaron Jones, who was released from the Green Bay Packers. So they kind of shored up the running back spot. So I think to me is quarterback, corner, edge, and then maybe interior offensive line.
Yeah, I actually like the Van Ginkel signing just because you have the Flores connection, and Flores has done real good as a defensive coordinator. He's real good at putting his chess pieces where they need to be. I'm going to mention a need that dudes would never mention, and that's at kicker. They let Greg Joseph walk in free agency. Their only guy on their roster is John Parker Romo, who has never kicked in an NFL regular season game. And when you have a rookie kicker or a guy who's never kicked in a regular season game, there always needs to be some uneasiness and some iffiness We saw some rookie kickers miss big kicks. They're high-pressure situations, and you do not know how somebody is going to react until they are in that situation. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the Vikings do at kicker, whether they sign a free agent, draft one, who knows. All right, dudes, we're down to our final team. And our final team just happens to have the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. It is the Chicago Bears. They have been busy in free agency. What do you still think they need to do?
I mean, obviously it's quarterback, so we probably don't even have to talk about that. Everybody assumes that Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 pick for the Chicago Bears going forward, especially since they traded away Justin Fields. I think their next biggest need is edge. They need somebody to pair with Montez Sweat. We saw, Brees, this defense take off when they made that trade for Montez Sweat. Matter of fact, last 6 weeks of the season, they were number 1 in points per game given up, number 1 in interceptions, and number 1 in regards to giving up rushing touchdowns. They were the number 1 rush defense in all of football all last year. So if you have somebody that can pair with Montez Sweat, just imagine what he did last year with somebody on the other side to take the attention away from him. I think makes a lot of sense for the Chicago Bears. Then another receiver. Yes, they traded for Keenan Allen, but he's only got 1 year left on his deal. He's getting up there in years, and DJ Moore is a really good player. But I think you need a third receiver just because you lost Darnell Mooney as well. So an offensive tackle could be a position, but I'm really high on Braxton Jones, and they took Darnell Wright last year. So that could be like somebody they take in the 3rd, 4th round.
I will take an L on the Montez Sweat trade because I was one of those people who said, why are you doing this, Chicago? His contract is expiring. You're going nowhere. The franchise is at rock bottom. and as you mentioned, he completely turned that defense around. And you get him a little help, give him pass rushing help on the other side, and maybe a little interior defensive line help. I think both those things would be good. I do think the interesting one is receiver, as you mentioned, even though they have Keenan and DJ Moore, that, like you said, Keenan's leaving. And the fact that you brought him in, though, I think you don't have to take a receiver until maybe the 3rd round. You don't have to rush it because you got that solid second receiver in there.